What's going on, guys? Greg here today, bringing a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 commentary. Today, I'm going to go over how I build my class setups and how I recommend you guys go about building class setups to try things out and see what works for you and your playstyle. So first things first, we're going to talk about the BAL 27 because this is a new gun. I don't really have too much playtime with it yet, but I have used it in zombies to level it up to max level. Used it a little bit online, and it seems like an alright assault rifle. So first things first, I always like to go ahead and look at our stats of the gun right off the rip to see what we're dealing with. And as we can see here, this is basically the same damage profile as the MCW. I believe it has a little bit more target flinch. The rate of fire is a little bit slower, but it has that ramped up fire rate over time. Now, our effective damage range and bullet velocity seem really good, and one thing to also mention with this gun is I believe it has an infinite 5-shot kill range if you hit certain parts of the body. Could be wrong on that, but with that in mind, it's like a 5 to 6 shot kill maximum. This is a pretty solid damage profile considering that rate of fire, and this could be potentially a great gun for longer ranges. However, then I take a look at our recoil control and I see that we have high recoil gun kick. I never really focused too hard on vertical recoil as I think that's the easiest type of recoil to control, but horizontal and recoil gun kick are definitely the hardest to work with here. And horizontal recoil is obviously going to be horizontal, so left to right, and recoil gun kick generally deals with how tight your spread is on your recoil plot. Now, mobility is pretty solid. We have a great ADS walking speed, which is the ADS movement speed, and our overall movement speed here looks really good. Our handling looks about average with ADS and sprint to fire. So overall, this gun looks like it is a great gun on paper, but let's go ahead and actually shoot it and see how it feels in the firing range. And I'm not going to control it, I'm just going to shoot it. So that recoil looks a little wobbly, but I'm going to shoot it at my recoil wall. That's what I like to call this right here. And the idle sway doesn't seem too bad on this gun, so we won't really have to compensate for that too much. But if I shoot an uncontrolled clip at the wall, looks like we have a little jump to the right, up to the left, to the right, back to the left, and then straight up. So if we do it again just to see, how it's looking over time, we can see that general trend here. I wouldn't even compensate for this down to the left here. I would just compensate down to the right, personally, for control. And honestly, we could probably just compensate this down to the right the entire time. And it seems like overall, the accuracy isn't too bad, but it's a little wobbly, and going up against some of the more accurate guns in the game, especially with less directional shifts, that could be a problem. So let's go ahead and try to build this gun in order to help reduce that wobbliness of the recoil. So looking at our options here, I always like to take a look at the pros and cons in the detailed stats so I can see exactly what they're doing. This barrel, while it is going to give us more movement speed, I do not want to hurt our bullet velocity too much, as bullet velocity is important for hitting targets at longer range. So, our options here, we have one that increases our damage range and bullet velocity, but knowing the damage profile of this gun and having that almost near infinite 5-shot kill, I am not worried about extending our ranges whatsoever. Bullet velocity, sure, but range, no. This is an assault rifle, so I'm not worried about hip fire whatsoever. Same thing with tac stance. What I'm mostly worried about, again, is going to be our recoil control, our mobility, and handling stats, because we're going to be using an assault rifle to play a hybrid playstyle, right? Up close, down range, long range, whatever it may be. So this barrel, again, might be great on a gun that has a worse damage profile over range, but for this gun, I don't see it as worth it. Alright, this barrel, again, same thing. This barrel actually takes away our ability to run a muzzle. So, with that being said, I don't necessarily think I'm going to run it because this barrel isn't focused on our gun kick. And you guys can see that the visual recoil is still a little daunting and it still feels wobbly while I'm firing it. Now, of course, it is compressing that vertical recoil, but in my opinion, that's the easiest one to go ahead and do. So I'm going to go with, based off of this, I'm going to go with this barrel because we're still going to be allowed to use a muzzle. And we are hurting our ADS quite a bit, but 284 milliseconds is still fine for an assault rifle, especially if we play ranges a little bit more than up close. So let's go ahead and put that on. And now let's see how it feels. All right, so again, it's still wobbly. All right, it definitely doesn't feel as good as that other barrel, right? Because that one had more recoil control. But what happens when we put a muzzle on it? So first things first, I want to reduce that shakiness. So I'm going to put on some firing aim stability here with a muzzle with that. And also that will clean up our horizontal recoil. Now again, this muzzle right here is one of my favorite muzzles in the game, the Purifier muzzle brake, because it really gives you a clean like shot whenever you're shooting at somebody. There's not a lot of visual recoil with it, and it also cleans up your horizontal recoil, which this gun doesn't have too much, but it's a little added benefit for what I'm mainly trying to squeeze out of this attachment. Now, as you can see, our damage ranges are affected, but again, this gun, the damage profile is solid, so I'm not worried about that damage range on it. And the bullet velocity is going to get hurt, but we could use it for those mid-range engagements and just really try to focus on maybe playing a little bit more aggressive with it too. But if we put it on like this now, you can see the visual recoil is starting to get cut down a little bit. It feels a lot more accurate to control. All I'm doing is slightly pulling down to the the right, and you guys can see that it's proving to be a decently accurate gun now. If we shoot it at the wall, you can see that recoil is much more improved. It's a little bit more together. The bullets are not so far apart in between shots, and it's starting to really look like a much more controllable gun, especially visually. It's easier to stay on target, but I still feel we could improve that a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and look at our stocks and see what we have here. So again, I don't want to reduce the recoil. I don't want to reduce my firing aim stability for a little bit of extra movement here because I don't want this gun to be more wobbly than it already is. So we could go with this stock here, but looking at the actual benefits and the negatives here, I don't like what I'm seeing. 12% recoil gun kick, 8% horizontal recoil, and 8% vertical recoil. With all those negatives to our mobility and handling, I don't care for what we're seeing here, although we do gain some idle sway. But this stock, on the other hand, has a great recoil gun kick benefit, as well as horizontal and vertical recoil. And look at our mobility. We're barely losing any mobility in handling, just our hip fire accuracy, which again, I don't care about. It's an assault rifle. So if I go ahead and slap that attachment on, now we're really starting to get into some accuracy territory. Really can just beam with this gun. If I shoot it at the wall over here, you can see that initial recoil now is really low. Look at how straight that recoil path is. I mean, that's really easy to control. It's not deviating, not much horizontal compensation needs to go on there. So at this point, I like the recoil pattern. I feel that it's pretty smoothed out at this point. Adding more recoil is obviously something that's going to just increase the gun's, ease of use whenever it comes to those longer ranges. But what about that handling? Let's go ahead and take a look at our handling. So 284 milliseconds of ADS speed and 224 milliseconds of sprint to fire speed. That's a little bit on the higher end for an assault rifle right now. Most assault rifles you could build with great accuracy handling and balance to like 250 millisecond ADS and even less for the sprint to fire. So I like the DR6 hand stop a lot. It increases our mobility quite a bit, and it also decreases that ADS time and sprint to fire speed. So if we go ahead and slap that on, see how it feels on this gun. It's not too wobbly whenever it comes to the aim walking. And if I go ahead and shoot it, again, it still feels good. Strafing also allows for your recoil to be controlled easier because of a mechanic called recoil smoothing. So increasing that strafe is very beneficial. And we can see that it still feels very easy to control here. So for our last attachment, we could increase that bullet velocity, but then I noticed that it tends to harm our recoil quite a bit on this gun. And adding high grain is not needed because, again, our damage profile on this gun is very strong. We could add overpressure to throw off snipers and marksman rifle users a bit, but at the same time, I feel that there's better options here. So I'm not going to go in an extended mag. I think 30 is fine for an assault rifle, especially if you're being conservative with your ammo. Now, we could increase our recoil control a bit here. This only gives us a 2% ADS nerf, so maybe if this gun is still difficult for for you to control and you're just finding that, you know, you're just struggling with some part of the recoil pattern, adding this 10% more recoil reduction to gun kick, vertical and horizontal, might prove beneficial for you, but in my opinion, it's overkill. It's not really needed. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our other options here. This might be the worst attachment I've ever seen in COD history. Look at the nerfs on this. For 18% flinch resistance, no thank you. I'll just run marksman gloves as I always do, because it does the same thing as this right here. Better idle sway and flinch resistance without any cons. So I'll run my marksman gloves. No thank you on this attachment. As for this one, we're going to increase our mobility, nerf our ADS movement speed, and heavily nerf our sprint fire speed for better hip fire. It's an assault rifle. Why are you going for hip fire unless you're doing camo challenges? I wouldn't recommend it. Then there's this one. We are nerfing our recoil quite a bit, but we already have established a great recoil plot with this gun. So with those great handling benefits and mobility, let's see how it handles with that added recoil. Is it too much or is it okay? And I'm not going to lie, if we look at our recoil pattern, that is still highly controllable. Yes, it has more vertical. That's all I'm really noticing from the way I just shot that. And if I shoot it against the dummies, that's all I'm really noticing is that extra vertical, with which practice and over time as I continue to use this gun, I'll just build up muscle memory to controlling this gun. And I think that this is a great starting point for this gun in order to use it. Now to further test it, I'm going to go ahead and use the infantry vest. We'll throw on a Semtex so we can kill ourselves if we need to. Munitions box, do scavenger gloves just so we can pick up ammo. Lightweight boots is fine. Actually, I might try Stalker, see how the strafe is with that, and then mag holster just so we can reload fast. We're doing this in a private match, so I got bots loaded in here. The game mode is on free-for-all scrapyard, 1,000 points, 45 minutes, and constant radar. And we'll go ahead and load in, and now we're going to test it. So that was phase one. I do the private match in order to initially test everything, kind of get a build, see how it feels. Now we're going to take it into an actual scenario where we're playing against, well, not real players, but we're playing against bots. And I love how I spawn in right behind this guy right here. But essentially, the whole point of playing against bots is to just see how it handles, track your accuracy, track how it's going for you, and so I'll move that over to the accuracy tab, and we can see here, this feels very good. It feels accurate, it feels smooth, even at range, you know, it's not really hard to control. I'm just pulling down to the left, adding a little bit of strafing in there to help with the recoil control. Yeah, we can see this is definitely accurate. We go to our, right now we're shooting 80 accuracy with it. See a little bit longer range there. It feels really good, okay? Now, will it feel bad for longer ranges because we have lower bullet velocity? Sure, but again, I decided to opt for a little bit more mobility instead of bullet velocity this time around. Ooh, bad shots. Just so that way, I'm going to use this more aggressively because it does have that ramped up fire rate over time, and while it's not great maybe initially, if you do get into an engagement with multiple players, you already have your ramped up fire rate as you're spraying, so you could just quickly switch over to a new target. And I'm not going to lie, it doesn't really feel that bad for those medium range encounters. We can see it's pretty much beaming. Now, against a target that's tack sprinting, that's a story for a different day. But again, you pick and choose your gunfights based off of whether or not you know you can kill the enemy. If you can't, maybe give them a call out to your friends, teammates, whoever you're playing with. But as you guys can see, I'm just standing up here looking to pick things off. It feels good. It doesn't feel bad. Again, this is stage one of testing. You know, a real match is definitely going to tell if I need to really make some changes. But so far, it feels really good, really controllable. And overall, I like it. So that's how I build all of my classes in this game. I utilize private match. I utilize the firing range. We can see we're shooting almost 70 accuracy with it, so it is an accurate build, even though it does have some hurting it, but again, sometimes I feel like if you build the gun for too much accuracy, you don't really notice too much of the benefits anymore. I swear there's got to be like a clamp somewhere, you know? So, yeah, this feels really good. I like the way it feels. It's beaming, you know? So, could definitely be used. If we do want to try, you know, anything else, you don't have to go back. You can see your advanced stats in here. So, you know, if we wanted to try, let's say, a little extra bullet velocity, you know, maybe I'll take off DR6. Maybe DR6 isn't as needed, so I'll go ahead and take that off. And again, you know, I'll throw on high velocity here, because high grain, in my opinion, isn't needed. So, now we have high velocity on. How's it feel? It feels okay. I don't really notice the recoil addition there too much. If anything, it's gonna hit easier down long range. So, let's see here, I'm just running around, just shooting, seeing how it feels, different engagements, different ranges. I like using Scrapyard because it has a lot of variety of engagements. You know, hop up here, now we can see longer ranges. See if we can beam that guy right there. Yeah, so it feels good. I like what I've built here. I think it's a good class, and that is how I go about building all of my guns. You know, here's the rival. It's the same as the comp setup. I really just like making it as easy to shoot as possible, and then throw in high-grain ammunition instead of the DR6 hand stop on the rival. And, you know, we have a nice and beamy rival setup. For the most part, I think the rival isn't really the best SMG for pubs anymore, but still a decent SMG. But, yeah, so that's how I do all my classes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section below if this helped you out. And if you have any questions about making classes, be sure to ask in the comment section below. But that's all I have for you guys today. And I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.